Welcome back, CUBE community. This is Jackie McGuire, your principal security analyst and favorite security host. I am at Black Hat 2025 in the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, Nevada. It has been a fantastic day already, and it is about to get way better. I am joined by Jon Kuhn. He's the Senior Vice President of Product Management at Delinea. How are you today, Jon?
Very good. Thank you, Jackie.
We are here to talk about, I think, what is probably the most frequent topic that I have talked about for the last 3 months, which is identity, and more importantly, the role of non-human identities in the rapidly changing landscape. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So what are you hearing about identity right now? Like, what are your customers telling you? And I guess you're in charge of product, so I assume you're always the conduit between customer and outcome. Yeah. So what are you hearing in terms of what they need, what they're struggling with?
I got to say, I joined, early in my career into the cybersecurity bandwagon because maybe I was altruistic or so, but I wanted to save the world, and I've done various things in application network security when it came to endpoint security, when it came to security or cybersecurity in general. But the thing that's most exciting, I think, today is identity security, because if we believe the stats, most of what customers are struggling with is compromised credentials. Those are one of the key risks that people are dealing with in terms of exfiltration of data. And so this is the subject that we tackle at Delinea, is to really look at how can we help our customers reduce their blast radius from identity threats. Our customers, obviously one of the biggest topics right now that is at this conference, but I'm sure that a lot of people are talking about, is AI and its impact on identity security, as well as AI brings this non-human or machine component to things. And when you're dealing with AI and the frustration that our customers have, the first problem is visibility. They don't really know what's lurking in their environment. And that's the first thing, the first question that we get from customers is that.
Yeah, I find the shadow IT part of this AI boom is really, from a lot of the CISOs I talk to, what they're really, really struggling with, because teams either don't know that they should check with security before they just spin up a bucket to dump a bunch of AI stuff in. They don't know that they're not supposed to just connect to APIs without asking. And so I think that's, from what I'm hearing in the field, absolutely like top of mind, is that we don't think people have bad intentions. It's just that it's really hard to understand the full impact of what you're doing when you're creating data. Right. And people think they're just using a tool, but that tool is actively creating sensitive data, right?
That's right.
So we saw a huge acquisition. Palo Alto picked up CyberArk and Identity Play, and I had written, I wrote a overview of that, as we do as analysts, and I said, identity is the new perimeter. We kind of snarkily were talking about that before we started filming, but really, if you think about overnight during the pandemic, we went from, most people had a terminal or a laptop that was only belonged to the enterprise, you could only access enterprise stuff on it, and then all of a sudden, over the last maybe 10 years, everybody's using their personal MacBooks, everybody's at home, so really overnight we went to remote work, we went to like this need to merge like personal accounts and personal devices with enterprise devices, and that was a nightmare. But now you talk about agents doing probabilistic things. And if we had sat down 10 years ago and I was like, hey, so for our cloud environment, I'm basically just going to set up this detection that if it's like over 95% probable something's bad, we're just going to shut it down. And you would have been like, you're out of your mind. Like the 5% is a huge, but that's what agents are doing, right? And so how do you think about that? How do you think about containing that
one
chaos?
Of the most exciting thing that AI is bringing is this idea that you're becoming a force multiplier yourself. You can turn AI bots into doing more of your routine problems. But we deal a lot with privileged access. So we're dealing with a visibility problem in some respects of people utilizing their dev test environment. Anthropic, they're using GPT, they're using new models that maybe we haven't even heard of yet in those environments, and they're plumbing them into actual live data. And we've seen this. I can tell you, a financial services company who's looked across their dev test environments and found 100 instances where they have an orphaned AI agent, an LLM, that's actually pulling from live data for them to create some new application, but then they move on to a different project and that thing is still running within their environment. So we think visibility first when it comes, get the lay of the land of what tools are being used. The second thing that I think about is this force multiplier. We want people to be more productive. We want people to embrace this idea that IT moves from the no in every case to the department of yes.
Yeah.
And so, we think a lot about how do we help RT organizations become more the department of yes to allow much more aggressive use of AI, but not put the company at risk.
Yeah, and I think most enterprises are balancing this because I think a lot of CEOs are terrified that if they're not fully utilizing AI, they're going to get left in the dust by their competitors who are. So yeah, you want to take the brakes off. You want to just tell your employees, go run free. And we were talking about this because you were saying, I built the Department of Yes, years ago. And because we always talk about one of the hardest things about working in security is you feel like you're always the bad guy because you're always the person saying, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. Why did you do this? No, that's not okay. No, you can't spin this up. And I think one of the most remarkable transitions over the last year is we've accepted that, and I say this all the time, the horse is out of the barn with AI. You can't stop it. You really, really need to be a resource. And I think as the culture is shifting, I'm optimistic about it because security's having to become a collaborator. They're having to become an advisor. They're having to be a partner. And as we were talking, I'm like, if you can, take all of the shadow IT and all of these things that have historically been just a pain in the butt for security and just turn them into an onboarding pipeline, into hey, we saw you spun this up, wanted to give you some tips on how we need to secure it. This is the action we've taken. This is what we need from you. That's really powerful. And I think you guys have a new tool to help do this, right?
That's right. I mean, the first tool is really to gain that greater visibility, and that is understanding what AI is lurking within the environment, and then helping to provide tools that help you govern the access to that tool, in addition to how risky that tool is, or what data sources is it pulling from, what infrastructure is it connecting to, does the identities that it's using have access to that infrastructure, and are they of the right access caliber? Are they reduced enough to reduce the blast radius that may be an exfiltration attack? But we're going a step further. One of the great things we're talking about at this conference at Black Hat here is the ability to really focus in on the authorization piece of access. And so a lot of people talk about authentication, which is, does this person or this machine have access to this asset? We go a step further. For instance, we're looking within the session itself to look at what actions are being taken by that individual, or, as in the case much more these days as we started out, the non-human identities or machines themselves. And if you're going to this idea of the concept of IT being an enabler, yes. It's, let those scripts, let those machines actually issue commands, maybe even in production environments, and actually be able to record and understand, are they malicious or not? Is this benign, where you're maybe deploying a patch, or is it something where you're turning off the firewall commands and maybe dumping the log files and deleting the log files because you're trying to cover your tracks? We have the technology now with Iris AI, which is able to understand the authorization pieces, like what is happening throughout that session, be able to flag that for the administrator, take action in an automated way that may be destroying the connection, or maybe stopping the access altogether, so that the next time you're logged in, you can't access anymore. Or it may just be for the audit capabilities of just flagging it for the administrator.
So you're kind of trying to drill down to the actual intention behind what people are doing, right? Not just what are they touching and when, and it's more why. Like, why is this person doing what they're doing, or this entity, or this agent, whatever you want to, and
yeah, I love that you said that, because I think about that in 4 parts. One is, what's the intention, and can you help automate the intention of, like, this is what I was intending to have happen to this machine. 2 is the need. Does this person have the need to have that access? Maybe they are already qualified to have that access or not. The 3rd is the risk. Is this a high-risky activity or behavior that has been exhibited by this identity before, and can we utilize that to make a smarter decision? And the 4th area is really, how critical is this asset?
Yeah.
Is this very sensitive data, or is this benign? Again, like throwing out a patch there. And if you can couple those 4 things together, intent, need, the risk, and the actual asset itself in terms of the sensitivity of the data, then you can make really smart decisions using Iris AI and actually automate the decision making.
Yeah, and I think the intention part is really critical, because I think we want to believe that in programming and engineering and IT and security, everything is objective. There's one way to solve a problem. There's a best way to do everything. And what you'll find is there's always the joke that if you ask 3 engineers how to fix a problem, you'll get 5 answers. And so I think getting down to the not just what are you doing, because there are multiple ways to do everything, and you can't relegate people to just one way to do things. It's why are you doing it and how risky is. To your point, it's if I'm playing with VPC logs or internal approved firewall traffic, probably not a huge deal. If I'm touching customer data, if I'm touching, API keys and private keys, that's probably a bigger deal. So I think we do have to, especially if we're using probabilistic agents, have to understand what that agent's, not just what it's doing, but why. And I'm a big fan, because I think that this is the right way to go. And I think when you guys were nice enough to quote me in your press release, and that's what I said, is this is fantastic, because one of the things that makes security so amazing is we're a community, and it's all, I've got your back. And we feel that when we're together, but I feel like one of the things we need to do more is bring the rest of IT and the rest of the company into that fold. And that Iris AI is a great way to be like, hey, we've got your back. We saw that this happened. We're taking steps to help you. We just want to help you do things in the safest way possible, but do what you're going to do. Do what you're doing, innovate. Let's just do it safely. And I love that.
Yeah, so just to tell you a customer anecdote about that too. Yeah. You're just thinking about the innovation that we can do with Delinea, Iris AI, and Authorization, to this point that an AI agent may do things unnaturally that are maybe outside the scope. We had a recent very large-scale university that had a chatbot, and that chatbot somehow got access to the applicant data that was behind. This is the people who are trying to get access, to be accepted into the university, and inadvertently the chatbot basically was pulling data about the students, incoming students, and who they were coming into the university. And it's at the speed at which we're trying to innovate with these new applications like chatbots, we need better authorization decision making that can remove the human, but can make much more intelligent decisions that, based on the data that's being accessed, to, and with the intention of that data, well, maybe we ought not have that returned into the chatbot. So we're getting a lot of really interesting use cases like that allow our organizations to innovate faster, but put the guardrails and not gates into it. Back to this idea of being, the Department of Yes. Yeah,
and I think it's important to note that even the largest tech companies in the world are screwing this up. So there was Microsoft had a team of data scientists, and they pushed, this model to a GitHub, and they didn't realize that somehow a full machine backup had been in that model, and it had things like unhashed session tokens. And so I think it's something that it's not because of expertise, it's not because of resources, I think a lot of it has to do with just things are moving so fast, and data is exploding, and you can't do it all. And so, I think having the advantage of having a large company that sees massive numbers of transactions, that knows behavior patterns, that can, to your point, leverage the intelligence from the rest of the community and from your own environment to make really intelligent decisions. I think it's a much better way to bring people into the fold and to really demonstrate that, we can help. It's not an overwhelming challenge where you should just throw your hands up, because that's kind of where security teams were at last year, is they were like, we can't keep up with this. We just can't let people do this. And it's that's not going to be realistic. So
that's right.
So hopefully, I think there's a lot of hype around AI and silly things that people are trying to do with AI, but I think this is actually one of the really good examples of, we can use this crazy community intelligence to do things that are very practical.
That's right.
Not just novel.
Yeah. Speaking of the practicality, we had another large scale, this is a healthcare firm, which I thought was a really interesting use case, where for this new application they were developing, they wanted to understand in real time what performance impacts parts of the application have, and based on that, deploy the right sized infrastructure to that use case. And so the engineer that was working on this basically created an AI bot that would be smart enough to then check the performance of various parts of the application, and then understand what the cost factor was at that given time for maybe replacing the EC2 instance or whatever instances were being utilized, and then was able to create a model which went out and actually made those choices. The problem is that it was a manual. There was actually, because it's privileged access, there was a manual process of approving that, and so it really slowed down everything. We showed them that by utilizing, the authorization agent that we developed with Delinea Iris AI, that they could actually automate a decision like that, because we could check it against a policy for, this was benign, it was something that they could re-platform pretty easily, they could save those cost benefits, but they weren't really involving any sensitive data. And so this is something they could reap the benefit of, which I thought was really cool. This is, there's stories every day about people just reaping the productivity benefits of utilizing AI. So I thought that was
and in security, we could always use more time to triage the 10,000 alerts in our SIM, right?
Right, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is amazing. I know we're going to have you back, I'm sure. You're one of my favorite guests. We spent so much time talking yesterday. I had so much fun.
Fantastic time.
But what else? Let's give a plug. Anything else you have going on at Black Hat? I know you have a booth, so we want to send people over there to come meet you guys.
Yeah, we have a booth here. We've got an amazing, energetic team behind that booth. We're spending each time, bring your problems around AI to us. That's what we really want to tell people, is that come and let us help you a solution around authorization.
Stay tuned for more coverage. Black Hat 2025 from Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. I'm Jackie McGuire for theCUBE. We'll be right back.